Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Ben, and today I have a few ideas for Vox Machina one-shot that I want to sort of present. It's an Archon one-shot, and it has some spoilers for Campaign 1, Campaign 3, and like super minor ones for Campaign 2, which I'm sure if I don't even mention how it could be one, you won't notice. So if you don't want anything spoiled from Campaign 3 or Campaign 1, click off now. Otherwise, let's get into the one-shot idea that I've sort of brewed in my head. I have two Archon one-shot ideas. This idea sort of came from Keyleth talking about Archon loosely in one of the most recent episodes of Critical Role, where she said sometimes it's not always just business. Now, I have two ideas. One where the Vox Machina crew is much more active and they go and search out Archon, and one where they're much more reactive and Archon has come to them for whatever reason. Now, we're going to start with the active one, and I do think there should be a few things to keep in mind. We don't want to mess with the Critical Role timeline. Realistically, that means we can't really kill any of them off permanently. Like, you can't kill many members of Vox Machina who we've seen in Campaign 3. You could kill Grog, you could kill Scanlan, you could kill any of them, but they've technically been in the Teldore Reborn campaign guide, but whether or not that's, like, something to be strict to their world about, we don't know. So realistically, you can't kill Percy, Vex, Vax can't show up and die either. You can't kill Pike, and you can't kill Keyleth. Everyone else, realistically, is up for grabs to kill, but I honestly don't think they'll die, personally. I also don't think we can risk Derrig, Orum's one-shot character from the Danlan's Closet, and I think it would actually be more funny if he introduces a new character for this. Like, instead of using Liev again, he could use a new character, because that would mean every single one-shot for Vox Machina that's happened since the end of Vox Machina, he's had a different character. And I think that would be very fitting for him to have a new character. So yeah, those are the rules I want to sort of put out there before starting this one-shot. Let's get into it. So, starting with the active story, 5 years after the events of Campaign 1, some of Vox Machina have sat and stewed over the fact that Archon sort of fucked them over at the end of their adventure. Doesn't really matter who, but I think Keyleth and Percy are probably the best options, as they had some sort of relationship with Archon before he showed up in Campaign 1. They did a little one-shot, and those three characters were all in the one-shot. Before whoever goes and regroups everybody, we get the usual where they are now, and we see what they're doing, who they're with, etc., etc. These where are they now segments would all end with either Percy or Keyleth showing up and saying that they have a problem to deal with, and then we cut to the next person's segment. Eventually they're all together, and they can pool their knowledge together that someone has been gathering on Tiamat and the Nine Hells, and potentially even Archon. If they don't do well on history or religion checks, they could easily just scry on him, because that's a thing they can do. Somehow they'll learn he's in Avernus, or wherever the hell Matt wants to put him, and they can either plane shift there, as that's most likely where they're going to put him, because if they scry, they'll get like almost an exact location about where he is, and then plane shift basically takes you to either a general area near it or basically right into the place they're thinking of. They'd see his black tower if they scry, and that's basically all they have to do to know exactly where to plane shift. But they need a tuning fork. They should have one, because they went to the Nine Hells before in Campaign 1. But if they don't have one because the players forgot or things have been shifted around since the last time they played, I think this would be a cool way to introduce a super young Plane Rider Rin into Campaign 1, and that way she can be a character who's been in all three campaigns, and I think that would be a very cool idea. Now, she would be like early 20s at this point. She's in her mid-50s in Campaign 3, and 36 years earlier, she would have to be at like in her 20s, maybe even 18, 19, and I think that would be cool to introduce this character. I think Vox Machina could make a deal with her for them to get her tuning fork to Avernus or wherever Matt wants to put him, and then Keyleth in return will take her to other places, the Feywild, the Elemental Planes, and that's sort of how she begins to be able to like plane shift everywhere she needs to go. With the tuning fork, they will travel basically right to the Black Tower, and they will make their way up, or they will attempt to make their way up the Black Tower, and that's sort of the mission of the campaign, or the one-shot. At this point, some of you D&D players who have played Descent into Avernus, or DMs who have read Descent into Avernus, might see a few similarities here. On the early levels, they'll meet Krull, the Death Priest Tortle of Tiamat, and he is surrounded by a few ghouls. They can either fight him or convince him to go up to the top floor and meet Arkhan. If they do, they skip combat, but if not, they have to fight Krull and all the ghouls, and potentially Krull might give away the whole thing that these guys are here, warning Arkhan potentially during this fight. After that, they move up through the tower, and they're going to learn a bit about Arkhan's backstory, whatever Matt/Joe is willing to share, and they see plans of releasing Tiamat in some way or fashion. They eventually reach the second to last floor, or the penultimate floor, and they will encounter Torogar Steelfist, the bodyguard of Arkhan. If Vox Machina come up with Krull, Torogar goes up to the top floor with them to engage in the meeting and have a talk. He is the bodyguard of Arkhan. If they come to this level without Krull, he will yell for that intruders have invaded the tower, and he will attempt to run up to join Arkhan for the final confrontation on the top level. If the party can stop him before shouting or running up, they'll fight him here alone, where he will try to run and try to, defend himself as best he can, but he'll try to run and try to yell for Arkhan. Depending on what Vox Machina did, they'll reach the top floor and give Arkhan a choice to either fight or give up the hand. And depending on if Torogar and Krull are still alive, we'll see what happens. At this point, Joe Manganiello will join the table, and he'll give his answer. Arkhan's always going to choose to fight, as it's just business. If Krull and Torogar are still alive, they'll join Arkhan, and if only one of them is still alive, they'll join Arkhan as well. That way, Matt can actually participate in the final fight instead of Joe being the only one there. And if neither Krull or Torogar are there, there is going to be a Manticore, the pet Manticore of Arkhan, at the top level so they can all fight. And with that, I would imagine the 7v2 advantage or 7v3. You could even have Krull, Arkhan, Torogar, and the Manticore still, and I still think the advantage is with Vox Machina, but it would still be cool to see. Eventually, they'll beat him. Maybe they'll lose a few people, and I think it'd be very, very fun to watch Joe Manganiello and Matt sort of do this final boss fight. It'd be really cool. One thing I did forget to mention, though, somewhere along the line, they do have to encounter Liam's new character. I do think if they land in Avernus in like a city or a town near the Black Tower, which might happen as well, they could encounter some sort of wizard person or something like that, or a hexblade, maybe. Some sort of warlock, I think, would be like very fitting, as that way anyone could realistically be in Avernus and have made a deal with the devil and they're stuck here, and now their job is to kill Arkhan. I think that would be an interesting way to sort of introduce a Liam character. But if you really wanted to have Liev Tell or even Derrig, you could, and that way you can just throw them here with them at the beginning. But I think Derrig is going to get avoided. If they were to ever do this one shot, they would avoid Derrig, because Orym and Derrig are like the exact same thing. They're the exact same class, so it would be very boring for him to go from Orym to Derrig, because it's the same thing. I think it would be more likely he makes some sort of wizard clone to be like Caleb, because he has said many times he misses Caleb, and I do think it's more likely he'll make some sort of heavy spellcaster character to sort of be such a different thing from Orym. So somehow, some way, they run into Liam's character before getting to the Black Tower. You do it in a million ways, and I think the best would be some sort of warlock, maybe. That way they can add a bit more punch and, to some magic. But, you never know what he'll pick. I would imagine he would either pick Liev Tell or Derrig, but for whatever reason, Derrig just sits there and goes, "You're too much like Orym. I don't think he'll want to do it." So that was the heavy action-based one that the party would take if they want to seek out Arkhan themselves. I'm kind of keeping it vague because I don't want to, that'd be boring for me to, go through every detail, every check they have to make, every roll they have to do, and, how I think the fight would go. I think the fight would be them beating Arkhan. I just don't imagine them losing because they're Vox Machina. They kind of have to be there. It can be difficult. I can imagine some of them potentially dying. Like I said, we haven't seen Scanlan or Grog. Even Terry, if Terry were to somehow be pulled along with this, I could see Terry dying. But, there's a bunch of things you could do with this group that I think would be interesting. And, but the descent into Avernus sort of influence is here for this one, because they're going to Avernus or wherever the hell the Black Tower is. And there is differences between where the fight takes place in the Avernus book and this one. I want this one to take place in the Black Tower because I think Matt could make a sick map out of it. And yeah, I would love to learn more about Arkhan this way. The reactionary based one that I sort of came up with has us learning less about Arkhan. This one would have us learning more about Arkhan, and I think that would be very cool for us to sort of learn more about his backstory in universe as opposed to watching YouTube videos of Joe Manganiello describing it, which would be cool. I would like Vox Machina to learn more about the guy who effectively stabbed them in the back. And now for the reactionary one. This one can take place any number of years before campaign 2 anyway, like, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. As long as it's before campaign 2, I think this one's good. And it falls on the Winter's Crest Festival in Whitestone. Vox Machina have all reunited to enjoy the Winter's Crest, probably, what they do every year, and enjoy it. At this point, I would like to see the clock tower is completely fixed. That way we can destroy it. And as everyone's enjoying it, the snow is nice, everyone's enjoying the festival that's going on, when suddenly a bunch of the snow begins to melt away in one of these central squares, potentially even near the clock tower, and a portal opens up, and Krull and a bunch of ghouls and demons and manticores come out and start attacking people. And obviously Vox Machina have to rush in to give them aid and defeat them. Krull isn't very strong. He's a CR6. Obviously Matt would pump that way the hell up if Krull is to be this way. But eventually they'll learn that Krull is merely just a distraction as Arkhan has come for the ziggurat beneath Whitestone Castle, as he wants to somehow use it to release Tiamat. Eventually they race back and they come across Torogar Steelfist again, and he's potentially got some ghouls with him, maybe a manticore of his own, and they do another fight here, and then eventually they move into meeting up with Arkhan in the ziggurat itself. I think that would be a very fun way to sort of do things, and like I said, this one's much more reactionary. They have to sort of realize that certain things are going on, and with it being 3 fights, there's less room for them to learn about Arkhan, but I would still like the idea of the potential threat of them opening up to the Shadowfell or opening up using the ziggurat to another plane would be really fun. I don't think the magic reducing shit should still be happening in the ziggurat, but I do think it's a cool idea to have him sort of go on the attack and say like, hey, this is a place that can channel great power and potentially I can use it to open up Tiamat. And if somehow Vox Machina were to fail, because let's say Arkhan uses it and opens up a portal and has like a bunch of ghouls himself, manticores himself, and like he just overwhelms the party with a bunch of stuff and he's able to somehow release Tiamat, you could do another one shot where Vox Machina has to fight Tiamat, and I have no doubt in my mind that Matt owns a massive Tiamat mini that I would think would be fucking sick. Maybe you could even do the Tiamat fight here. Like, they're too late either way. Depending on how many turns Krull and Torogar Steelfist take up, Tiamat and Arkhan could be the final fight, and they're all level 20 characters, so fuck it. I think that would be sick. That'd be a fun little thing. Maybe Arkhan dies in releasing Tiamat, and that way Joe Manganiello doesn't show up at the table, but, I think it could be cool to have Arkhan and Tiamat fighting, and that way the boss is still Matt Mercer, so he can still have a huge part in it instead of just being Krull, Torogar, and a Manticore or two. So, yeah. I think this one, I preferred this one. I think it's much more like better. I think it's better because heroes are better when they're reactionary, and they look more heroic when they're reactionary because they're defending, as opposed to actively seeking someone out to execute them. But at the same time, going after Arkhan is necessary. He has the hand of Vecna, and I would at least at some point like to see this one shot happen, because realistically, there should be a one shot about Arkhan. Like, a one shot, a 2 shot, a 3 shot, it doesn't matter. We need to see Arkhan again, because right now I personally think that it's a dropped subplot. It's the only thing that I can think of from campaign 1 that hasn't been wrapped up, and I would like to see it wrapped up. And it's been a long time since we've seen Vox Machina in a game. Danlin's Closet was the last one where they were all together, and I think it'd be really cool for them to come back together as a group. So, Arkhan one shot. These were my ideas for it. I have 2 of them, like I said, the reactionary one and the actionary one. So let me know what you prefer. Do you prefer them going into Avernus, potentially meeting up with Plane Rider Rin, and sort of learning about Arkhan? Or do you prefer them being reactionary? And in this reactionary one, I would imagine Liam would just play Derrig, because Derrig would be with Keyleth to sort of protect her. So that sort of fixes that problem of Liam needing a character. I do like the idea of Liam having a new character for every one shot. So if you wanted to say some strong traveler just so happened to show up in Whitestone, that's fine too. But otherwise, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys on Thursday for a big video. The big video I mentioned at the end of my last one. It's not done yet. I tried. It's very big. So, yeah. You guys will see that hopefully Thursday. I pray it's done Thursday. So, yeah. Friday. I pray it's done Friday. I'll be working on it Thursday and Friday. So, yeah. Peace.